So the wiring here is for an RS bike, because that's what I took this off of. And I'm going to be converting to an RT. So that means that the wires that go to the handlebar controls have to be longer. Now, interestingly, the left side has the proper length for RT handlebars, which is about 520 millimeter long, or roughly 20 inches. So somebody's replaced this at some point and put in the really long harness. But on the right side, it's a shorter harness. This is, I think, 380 millimeters, or about 15 inches. But interestingly enough, the RS wire to the handlebar controls, their lengths were even shorter. So I think maybe this got replaced at some point too. But unfortunately, it's too short. So I'm going to have to splice extra wire into each of the connections to the handlebar control. The other thing I'm going to do is, of course, since I have to remove the wires to do the splice, I'm going to replace the worn out grommets, and I'll replace the grommet on the left side as well. At this point, the shell's pretty empty, and this is that right side handlebar control cable that I need to lengthen. So I just need to remove about 3 of the wires to pull it out, and then I can splice in some extra lengths of wire so it'll be the right length for the RT handlebars. There are 4 wires that you need to disconnect. One of them is a green wire, which does not connect to the connector board. It's connected to a separate green wire inside the headlight shell. Another one is a green-blue wire. It also is not connected to the connector board, so you'll separate it from the wire it's connected to. The other 2 wires are on the connector board in the red boxes shown here. They are the brown-yellow and the blue-yellow wires. So I have the right side switch out of the headlight shell, and what I did is just pressed the grommet out the back here, and then as I got it out, I could pull each of the wires through the hole, and then I slid each wire off the grommet, one connector at a time. So what I've got to do now is I've got to add 5.5 inches to each of these wires, and then that'll make this wire bundle the right length to fit with RT handlebars. So I'm soldering in this extra splice into each of the 4 wires, and I've put some shrink tube on this end so I can get a bunch of it across the wire where I do the splices as an extra precaution. And then on each wire, I actually cut them at a slightly different length on each end. The idea is that when I do a splice, no 2 of them are going to line right up on top of each other. So that's a good idea, both electrically in case anything chafes. They won't short circuit, and also it keeps the thickness smaller through the whole length, because if all of these lined up, then you get a big bulge, which I don't want. Now the way I do the soldering is I stripped back the wire, and these are stranded wire, so what I do is I actually mate them like that so that they're a minimum bulge, and then I solder them. And then there's a piece of shrink tube that'll go over that solder joint. And when I get done, then I'll slide these 2 larger pieces of shrink tube, one of them over the splices on this end, and the other one on the splices on this end. So that will do a good job of insulating the solder joints. The other thing I did is I slid the new grommet on since I'd already cut the wires. Makes it a lot easier to put on than trying to fish it over these connector terminals. So I'm finished soldering in the splices, and I went back and verified that the color of wire on each end of each splice, those are the same colors, because if I mistakenly splice between two different colors, that's going to be fun to diagnose that. Certainly don't want to have that happen. Now, this is the longer wire that's in the headlight shell, and if I take the two and lay them alongside each other, I've got plenty of length in my spliced cable for the right side, so this should work well with the RT handlebars. So I've got the fatter shrink tubing shrunk over the splices, and I'm going to use some nitro tape, and I'm going to wrap this all the way down and seal it so that it'll be waterproof. So I've got the cable wrapped up nice and tight with nitro tape, so that'll give me a good waterproof seal over the whole length.